Yeah, at the time George Bush was in office, we had a Republican who was both in favor of deregulation and who was also a proponent of home ownership. So there was this vast kind of overtures and policy that really fueled and encouraged home ownership, which then led to the mortgage industry allowing for dead people to get a mortgage and beyond. So, yeah, so if you're talking about fueling home ownership, then yeah, I mean, at the time, it could not have gotten any more robust than that.
From Two Comma Media, it's Give 'Em the Business, a show about Black entrepreneurs and business leaders sharing their stories of adversity and success. I'm Troy Evans, and on today's show, my guest is Robb Jones, founder of Cityscape Housing, one of Atlanta's largest home construction companies. If you were around during the early 2000s, one thing you might remember is just how much the housing market was like the Wild West. This was a time when millions of people could qualify for a house by simply having a pulse. No income or savings needed, just being a human being qualified you for a home loan. This led to a tremendous housing boom where home builders like Robb Jones were able to capitalize on the tremendous appetite for new construction. But before he could build his first home, he had to first find his way to Atlanta. And of course, there were some stumbles along the way.
I came up in a middle-class family. Good parents, great surroundings, good support system. My mom and dad started off in a corporate environment. My father was an attorney. My mom was in medical technology. And then they merged into entrepreneurship along the way when I was probably in my teens or whatnot. And so my inspiration for being an entrepreneur truly came from the motivation and the commitment that I saw from them transitioning in from a corporate environment into their own entrepreneurial endeavors. And so that stuck with me from a very early age, and it was just ingrained in me to be that once I had an opportunity to get into the world of capitalism. And so those lessons and seeing them and their commitment to building a business the right way, day by day, block by block, truly was embedded in me along all of my endeavors along the way as an entrepreneur.
And what about Birmingham specifically? I know it has a history of Black entrepreneurs, mainly out of necessity, like A.G. Gatson and others. But did that environment, being in the South, encourage you or maybe dissuade you in any way about the challenges that Black men and women face in going into business?
Not so much. I mean, surprisingly, even though you have that titan like A.G. Gaston that you grow up hearing about and, you know, having his iconic presence in Birmingham, Birmingham's really not much of an entrepreneur city as Atlanta is. And so, you know, most of the people I grew up with, and most of the environment was around getting a corporate job. Alabama Power, Regions Bank, those corporations were big employers. UAB Hospital were big employers for the city. And most people that I know even to this day have corporate jobs versus becoming an entrepreneur. So that was really the environment of entrepreneurship that I've most enjoyed in my whole career has been really in the city of Atlanta, where you really have a thriving entrepreneurial community that in most cases is very supportive. But Birmingham, not so much. Did not really have a lot of examples outside of my parents where I saw day-to-day entrepreneurs that I could learn from. So they were my biggest inspiration, yeah.
And so what drew you to Atlanta?
So really just going to Morehouse. I mean, I'm a pretty decisive person. Although I knew I had to go to college, I really didn't pursue or look too far other than Morehouse because I was recruited by Henry Goodgame, who at the time had just gotten into the Morehouse administration. He was from Birmingham, and he came back to his hometown to look at promising young graduating African-American men, and I happened to be in his sights. And other than that, he came and sat in my basement with me and my dad, and Morehouse sounded like a place that I could thrive. And I also went to Freaknik 91. And between those two influential factors, Morehouse became the choice for me. And I ended up in Atlanta for the rest of my life.
You say Freaknik. I remember when I was visiting the AUC and Morehouse in particular from high school, it was just a coincidence that my high school spring break always fell at the same time of freshman week in the AUC. And so when I would visit, there would be step shows and fashion shows, and I thought that was every single day of college life. And I was like, I'm going
this is the life I want to live. Right. And then School Days came out, and that's to this day is my favorite movie. And so, so Morehouse caught me, and then the city of Atlanta caught me, and I just never left. Yeah.
And so talk about your experiences at Morehouse and, why was that such a inspirational or important moment in your life?
Yeah, you know as much as I do that Morehouse really refines who you are in every way. So, and then just to be in an environment where, there's the best of the best all across the country, because everybody comes there thinking that they're the best of the best, or they come from a scenario where they're the best in their own city or in their own pond, and then to be in an environment where everybody either is the best or they think they're the best. And sometimes they may not be the best, but the fact that there's a level of confidence amongst everyone who shows up really gets you in a position to compete beyond Morehouse. And so, the environment, even when I think back on it, I tell people all the time, they think I'm argumentative, but I call it debating. And our environment on campus was a daily debate. So I don't know where other people, if they came up on the block in Brooklyn and they were ciphering and rapping, when you come outside of class, you see a bunch of different ciphers. Some of them may be, talking about hip hop, but others may be talking about political issues. Others may be talking about social issues, but it was always a debate. And so those healthy debates and just the overall intellect and environment and the strength that Morehouse builds inside of you, it really does prepare you for the world. And that's probably one of the best decisions I've ever made, other than marrying my second wife.
When you talk about that debate, I get the same thing sometimes. But, I've always looked at it as it's your job to convince me that you actually believe what you're saying.
Yep.
And if you don't, I'm going to win that conversation, and we're going to go in the direction that I want to go in.
And you're always looking to win.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so really you were in a time of the pinnacle and demise of Freaknik. So, we'll say 2.5, 3 Freakniks later, you leave Morehouse.
Yeah.
You've majored in business.
I majored in political science at Morehouse.
Okay.
Morehouse, yeah. I majored in political science and came out of Morehouse in 96. And I immediately, I remember packing my bags and packing everything up, moved back to Birmingham for 1 year to start a business when I was 22. Graduated from Morehouse in May of 96, started my first business when I was 22 called Greek Gear. And so that was my first entrepreneurial endeavor, and that was immediately after I graduated from college. And, fortunate enough for me, in my opinion, never had to work a corporate job.
And Greek Gear, what was Greek Gear all about, and why did you think there was a demand for it?
So I started Greek Gear with a friend from Birmingham who was a fellow frat brother of Kappa Alpha Psi, and he was really a great artistic designer. And we came to understand that there was a gap in the marketplace where there was no brand of apparel associated with Greek, African-American, or Caucasian Greek apparel. And so what we saw in the marketplace was just kind of this fragmented marketplace where individual proprietors would, design and sell kind of, in my opinion, cheesy Greek apparel that never evolved. And so we saw an opportunity to create an entire line of Greek apparel and attach a name brand to it, much like at the time we felt like a Tommy Hilfiger or or a polo of Greek apparel, and then expand the line of Greek apparel so that more mature Greeks who had already graduated from college or in a professional environment, we could create apparel that, was more suited for their day-to-day wear. And so we would have a line of, suit jackets or ties or robes or whatever it was that we could go beyond the typical T-shirts and hoodies that were in the marketplace. And then the designs that he came up with were of essence. It really captured the essence of Greek life that I think a lot of Greeks really took to. And so we went on a road show, and we got all much of our apparel in bookstores and HBCUs. And we even went and pitched to a department store in Birmingham called Parisians, which is now Belk in Atlanta, bought out Parisians. And we actually convinced them to house house our product in a section of their store, developing a whole line that people could, come and purchase from a retail perspective. That was proof of concept to us. Unfortunately, when they started asking us about seasonal purchases and seasonal inventory, we kind of looked at each other and said, how are we supposed to do that? So we were severely undercapitalized, and there was no way we were going to be able to capitalize inventory a year in advance or even make that commitment to a department store. And so, but for me, at 22, I carried my bills for a year, had a storefront, and got good exposure to the world of entrepreneurship. So in my opinion, it's not necessarily the failures, or that I don't consider that to be a failure, but it's all of those experiences that you accumulate over time that help you become the entrepreneur that you are, and that for me today. And so I'm extremely appreciative for that opportunity.
And so that experience of Greek gear started to take off for you, but then it got to a point where you couldn't take advantage of the opportunity or the demand that was there. And did outside financing come into play for you, or did you consider trying to keep the business going on a bootstrap budget, or what led you to say, this is not something I want to continue to pursue?
Well, I think there were just these pressures. And my partner had at the time, I was 22, he was maybe 26. He had a wife and a child. And so when I'm 22, living in my basement of my parents' house, or in my old loft in my parents' house, he has a wife and a child. There become, even when you make money and you're trying to put money back into the business to grow it, at least I was, but he had a different responsibility that I pretty much did not understand at the time. I couldn't have understood it because wife and child just wasn't nowhere near in my sights. And so there'd be times when we had friction about when money comes in, why are we taking a distribution? And he was taking a distribution because he had to feed his family. Well, at the time, things started missing a little bit, and when you reflect on it, you see that those pressures got to him, and I don't blame him for it, but I think that once, we kind of compromise trust, then it makes it a little bit more difficult to move forward. But capitalization, we did, have some capitalization from friends and family, but to extend the pathway, of trying to build a full line of apparel in conjunction with his, family constraints made it difficult to continue on. But I still think about it today. It's still a gap in the marketplace, and I'm still going to pursue that one day.
And so you go beyond Greek gear and you come back to Atlanta at that point in time and dive into network marketing for a brief moment.
Well, actually, I came back to a good friend of mine named Troy Evans, who was in the middle of building a company called Onyx, who said, "Hey, man, if you coming back over to Atlanta, or do you want to come back over to Atlanta and join me in my entrepreneurial endeavor?" He said, "I'd love to have you." He said, I think he saw me as a first-round draft pick. He said, "I need to pick this guy up right now."
I definitely did. And we ran into them same capitalization problems.
It was a repetitive theme in my life for about 15 years. But yeah, so I came back to Atlanta, joined you in Onyx, and then we went on our road show across the eastern seaboard from New York down to Florida, getting or slanging, I would say, black college swimsuit calendars. So, then we both got into network marketing and kind of understood what that whole venture and business model was about. All of these things being eventually learning modules for an entrepreneurial career. Yeah.
Agreed. And so you graduate from Morehouse in 96. You've got a few different entrepreneurial endeavors that you undertake in the late 90s. And then what changes? What makes you go in a different direction?
What changed, I think, I did a lot of stuff too. I mean, although I said I never worked a corporate job, but, I think it's important for people to know as an entrepreneur, you're willing and ready to do anything that it takes to stay afloat. So I literally washed cars. I had a friend who had a mobile car washing service, and I joined him, washed cars. I valeted cars. I did whatever it took to stay afloat. And then I determined that I wanted to complement all of my practical, real experience in entrepreneurship. I wanted to complement that with a theoretical side and an educational side. So I went to business school and got my MBA from 99 to 2001.
At Clark Atlanta University.
At Clark Atlanta University, yep.
And how did that change your life?
Well, it changed my life in two ways. It gave me an understanding of kind of empirical understanding of business. And so it really allowed me to, have a breadth that I may not have had otherwise. So to understand the theory behind marketing and understand finance and understand business management and IT and all of the things that a business is composed of from an educational perspective gave me a whole another dimension to my career in entrepreneurship. So that's the first thing it changed. And then the second thing is where I guess one of my most successful ventures came out of is being in business school with another classmate who was embarking upon a career in real estate and asked me to join him and another gentleman who would eventually become my business partners in real estate development company.
And so you're in grad school, you're learning the theoretical side to join the hard life lessons you've been learning in entrepreneurship. Yep. And then through networking, which tends to happen in business school, you were introduced to two other individuals who are getting ready to launch a real estate business, and you say, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, they, to a certain degree, invited me to be a part of it, and then I began to explore it. And then as soon as I graduated, joined them after, I graduated in May, and I think July 15th, I was working every day on this real estate development company.
And what company is that?
That company was called JLW Homes and Communities.
And now I remember, so I went to grad school a year after you, and, so I know a lot of these individuals too. And I remember at that time in the economy, it felt almost like houses were being handed out like candy.
Yeah.
And this unbelievable boom in building and the ability to acquire a house was taking place. Talk to me a little bit about what's going on at that point in time, how that's leading to your success and the company's success and where the company is going.
Well, yeah, at the time George Bush was in office, we had a Republican who was in favor of deregulation. And so both in favor of deregulation and who was also a proponent of home ownership. So there was this vast kind of overtures and policy that really fueled and encouraged home ownership, which then led to the mortgage industry allowing for dead people to get a mortgage and beyond. So, yeah, so if you're talking about fueling home ownership, then, yeah, I mean, at the time, it could not have gotten any more robust than that. However, in retrospect, and even along the way, you look at it and you understand that it was not a healthy market. I think we were in the right place at the right time to take advantage of it. And I think we had the components amongst ourselves and the relationships, the political relationships which we were beginning to develop, to put ourselves in a position to build a brand and really build a company. But during that whole venture, there were still a lot of things that I could intuitively see as an entrepreneur and the things I learned in business school to know that a good market in that sense was covering a lot of mistakes. And so, it's a capital intensive business and we were making a lot of money, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're doing everything right. And so I spent a lot of time even knowing that the company was not, fully functioning the way it needed to be. I spent a lot of time studying publicly traded companies, home building companies, and Fortune 500 companies that were in Atlanta, and spending a lot of time, understanding processes and policy making inside of companies, and just the culture, understanding what a good culture would be for, in our case, a development home building company.
And so when you joined JLW, you didn't know anything about real estate or home building, right? But that Morehouse confidence led you to believe you could figure it out.
Yeah, both we've done it together and separately that, you just feel like within any entrepreneurial venture or any venture, you have enough confidence to know that even if you don't know, you know how to figure it out. You know how to be resourceful and you know how to pull upon your network and you know how to be dedicated and persevere, and which was a common word and while we were in school is finagle your way through. Right. You just, not that it's a derogatory term, it's just a term that, has always been referred to as a finagle, and just meaning that you're going to figure this out one way or another, regardless of what you know about it or not.
Well, CAU's motto was find a way or
make one. Yep.
And so you've put your mind to, you think that there's a real estate opportunity, the environment is right, these partners are right for you to go into business with. Mm-hmm. You set your mind to learning the real estate business. What's going on for you personally in your life? What are you thinking about in terms of relationships, or are you still single at this point in time?
Yeah, still single. I think I had met my first wife shortly thereafter graduating from business school, and then I got involved in politics quite a bit. And she was working for Caesar Mitchell, and I was involved in his campaign early on when he became council member for the first time. And so, I'm still young, but I'm making money and enjoying myself. But in the back of my mind, you grow up with, two parents who are dedicated to each other, married, and that's the template. And so when I look back, I felt like I started looking for a wife. She shows up, and it seemed like this is what I should be doing. I should be married. I should be trying to have some kids at 27 and settle down. And that's actually what happened. I got married but didn't have any kids. But, when you look back on being that youthful, which I recommend people don't get married until they hit their 30s, because you just don't know. You don't have a true sense of who you are yet to be able to choose a spouse. And so yeah, I get married. So I'm married throughout the business all the way up at around 2007. Things go south in the marriage. Probably 2 years later, things go south in the partnership. And then a year later, things go south in the economy.
So you're trying to start and cultivate a strong business as well as start and cultivate a strong marriage at the same time. How do those two things compete against each other?
Yeah, they compete against each other every day. And it's important as an entrepreneur, for you to have a spouse that understands the demands of entrepreneurship. So, yeah, they compete. And so, then if you have any trust issues or you have this or you have that, then you really compromise what it could be, which is a loving and supportive relationship and marriage, into something that deteriorates very fast when you have to work late at night, or you have to take a call, or you have to do this, or you have to step outside, or you can't go on vacation, or you can't, whatever it may be. It begins to erode into your marriage, especially as a young husband who does not, at that time, not understand how you create a barrier around your family life and try to, separate it as much as you can, or dedicate time intentionally to your family as much as you can without compromising the progression of your business. And so it's a challenge, even to this day, but I certainly know how to deal with it much better today than I ever have in my whole life. But yeah, at the time, it was pretty difficult.
So going back to JLW, things are taking off in the early 2000s. When do you start to realize this might be the path that you're going to be on for the rest of your life, and you get the notion that this was a great decision?
Early on, probably in the first couple of years, you start to see that this was a place in an industry that people who became titans or wealthy people would, in some shape, form, or fashion, have some sort of presence in the real estate industry. And inevitably, you start seeing the rewards of the hard work. And then as an entrepreneur, money always changes your mind or creates an impression upon you as to, I'm doing something right. And so between that and, things starting to grow, and then we started to grow a brand, and then, it started to become really known in the industry, not just locally, but we got national exposure as in Black Enterprise and other publications, and then all of that stuff starts to snowball and the opportunities start coming more and more. We just, started to organically grow and then became to be more assertive and aggressive at our growth and start to really utilize the capital that was being thrown our way to start land banking and preparing for our pipeline of communities and houses to be built and developed. And it was a really exciting time, and we made a lot of money and got a lot of notoriety up on it. And when you look back at it, it's still just a step in my overall path. And so
how many houses at your peak were you all building? And you all were building primarily single family houses and developments, correct?
Yeah, we started off building block by block, one house at a time, and gradually would be able to buy more parcels, infill parcels. Then we bought land from the Bank of America Community Development Corporation, who had started developments and backed out of them. So we started buying all of their second and third phases for their developments that they left behind. And then next thing we know, we were buying our own land and developing our own land. So I guess at the height of it, we were probably a $40 million company and building about 100 houses per year. And then there were other ventures outside of the company that we all may have had, but that was the mainstay. Yeah.
And so you're at your height, you're doing $40 million a year, 100 houses a year. And so between 2001 and 2008, about how many houses did you all build?
Probably over 500 or 600 at least, because, we had to gradually get to that point where we were building 100 per year, but at least 600 houses, I would say. I never really looked back to calculate them, but over 600, potentially closer towards 1,000 maybe.
And what was your role specifically in the business?
So predominantly, we all had, more than one role, but predominantly my role was the entire operation, and then focused a lot on building a brand and marketing and sales. So I ran our internal sales team, I ran our brand development, and then inside of the operation, I basically became a hub of connectivity between finance and accounts payable and the construction department and sales and marketing. And so I kind of sat in the middle of the organization as a COO, but I also focused a lot on our sales and brand development.
And so then you said first the marriage started to show some cracks, then the partnership started to show some cracks before the economy started to show some cracks. So what started going wrong in the partnership?
So, without disparagement, there were just alignment issues on how I saw the business and the focus that needed to be on being better. So regardless of whether we were making money or whoever considered us successful, there just did not seem alignment as to doing things the way it should have been done, regardless of the success and the money that we were making. And then two, one of the other parties just had a different moral compass, and I just wasn't willing to compromise my principles just to make money or be in a partnership that I felt was eventually going to be unhealthy anyway. So, when I look back on it, I think that to a certain degree, the recession saved me from that whole venture. Even though we had started to unwind, I had made a decision that hadn't wanted to be a part of the partnership anymore. The recession eventually was the nail in the coffin for all of us. And so I made a decision before that happened to say, I'm stepping away. I'll help unwind as much as I need to and carry my share of dissolving this company. But I had already stepped out on my own before the economy really took the business down. So there's a lot of dynamics is going on in the company, and things not adding up, so to speak, financially. And there's some discoveries that were made. Just different direction and alignment just forced me to say, this is not where I want to be. Then the economy hits, then my divorce. So I had all these things, happening at the same time. I went through a business that had partnership dissolved, economy, bankruptcy, divorce, got remarried, had 2 kids, and then still had to be an entrepreneur with bringing a new wife and 2 kids into the world, into my world.
So you jumped ahead a lot.
Okay.
Skipped over a big part of it. Yeah. So the economy implodes.
Yep.
Largely driven by the housing market first and things that were going on Wall Street. You had already made the decision to exit the business. But now, how are you feeling personally where all of these things are starting to fall apart?
I don't get overly excited or overly depressed about anything. So the way I saw it is just things I needed to tackle. I didn't have time to, have a woe is me mentality. And so they were just happening. And as they happened, I just dealt with it. Just like today. As these issues and problems come about, you just deal with them. And so you don't really have a lot of time to think about how bad or good this is or could be or not. You just deal with the issue at hand. And so even in entrepreneurship, I always tell people that your number one job is to solve problems. Like, I reference, there's a scene in a movie called The Martian at the very end when Matt Damon is talking to, he's a professor after he gets off of Mars. And for NASA, he's a professor. He's talking to this class who, picking his brain. And he just basically says, they ask him, how did he do it? And he said, I'd wake up every day and I would say to myself, if I solve enough problems, I'll get home.
You do the math. You solve one problem, then you solve the next one, and then the next. And if you solve enough problems, you get to come home.
And so that's the way I look at it. I wake up every single day knowing that my day is going to be about solving problems, and that's the way I approach it. And that's the way I approach it back in, is that I just got to solve this problem one at a time. And you solve enough problems, you get a chance to go home, or you get a chance to be where you want to be in life. And so that's just the way I look at it, and eventually I solved enough problems to get me on the other side of that.
After the break, we'll learn how Robb rebounds from the triple implosion of family, business, and the economy, and what he learned from his first act in business. It's Give 'em the Business, and I'm Troy Evans. Give 'em the Business is sponsored by Bloodline Products, a leading provider in custom horse racing apparel, branding, and gifts. You can learn more about Bloodline Products at bloodlineproducts.com. Give 'em the Business is proudly sponsored by Gift Savvy. Don't stress over buying gifts for friends and loved ones. Save time shopping, stay on budget, always find the perfect gift, and never forget an important occasion. Be better than gift cards. Be gift savvy. Visit begiftsavvy.com. So you are now out of the real estate business when the economy collapses and you are financially strained, you are out of your first marriage, and you then meet your new wife.
Yep, met my new wife. And, really that's probably the beginning of my new life, and, where, real true happiness started to come back into my life was with my new wife. So, we knew early on that we were very much so compatible, and she was wanting to be an emerging entrepreneur, and so she understood my plight and everything that came along with it. And she was a beautiful, spirit that just really lit up my life, and then eventually gave me 2 kids. So yeah, but I guess the biggest thing about that was that, she was willing to go through that journey. So she saw me on, kind of at my peak as I was coming down, but she was also willing to go through that hardship and that journey with me, and she did.
And so you new love interest, get married, 2 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Never thought about getting a job?
I mean, it crosses your mind, but a lot of people have these fears. And some people are scared of spiders. Some people are scared of heights. Some people wake up in the middle of the night scared of falling off a building or riding a bike with no brakes down the hill. I'm scared of a job, literally. Like, I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about what my life would be if I had to go to a job. And so that fear for me became a healthy motivation not to even let that enter into my mind as an option. And so it was always trying to anticipate and stay ahead of creating something to be able to generate enough cash flow. But also the fact of the matter is you also got to kind of decrease your lifestyle and be willing to make the hard decisions for a mentality of delayed gratification. And so that comes along with it as much as the success and not wavering from that and being okay. So, I mean, even to this day, one of my main principles and what keeps me in motion is the balance between being content and ambitious at the same time, which is a lot of people ask me, what's your secret? That's my secret. Because it's very difficult to do. You got to be content with where you are. If nothing changed in my life right now, I make another penny, I'm happy where I am right now. However, I get up every single day trying to get way more than I got today. And so that balance between, being able to walk in your house and be happy and content with where you are, but still waking up with a level of aggression towards the world of capitalism is a balance that is a lot of people cannot strike.
Yeah, you need to put that in a bottle and sell it.
Or I'm going to do it with you, and you going to sell it. That's what we do, right? We'll figure it out together. Yeah.
So how long do you go between exiting the real estate business and your first journey and down that path until you start Cityscape Housing?
So between 2009, I have a best friend named Ralph Cook who was in government affairs and for a law firm up in D.C. He did federal lobbying. And so he had this background of relationships and understanding of government and earmarks and legislation and relationships with mayors. He had a contract with the city of Birmingham and for lobbying. And so we, at the point of when the economy hit its lowest, came together in great timing and established an offshoot of what he had already started as Handprint. We started Handprint Strategy Group. And basically what we did was we looked at, this is the time where Kasim came into office, the former mayor Kasim Reed. We had a relationship with him. And what I think a lot of people did intuitively is that when the economy started tanking, they gravitated to what they felt they could get business out of the city and the relationships that were there. Well, we saw it as too competitive. All of our friends were looking at the same pot of money and the same pot of opportunities. And I remember reading a book called A Blue Ocean Strategy. And it basically, the theory behind it is you want to find blue waters. You want to find, non-shark infested competitive waters. Because if you can get to the blue waters and you're out in an area where the competitive landscape is low, you're more likely to thrive and succeed. And we were watching people try to figure out how to get with the city of Atlanta and get contracts and this, that, and the other. And those were red waters. Those were shark infested, people cannibalizing each other, eating each other up. Competitive landscape is high. So we said we're going to find other opportunities that nobody's paying attention to. So we developed relationships with the mayors across the I-20 corridor. And we started we took a book of business or a book of relationships from Atlanta and started maturing opportunities in these other second-tier cities that nobody was paying attention to. And so those relationships with those mayors yielded us creating some public-private partnerships and being in water deals or infrastructure deals and then, also having contracts with, the community development department or city manager where initiatives or banner initiatives that they needed people to execute and implement them or develop them. And so we built a practice off of that for about 10 years.
So you pivot from real estate into strategy work and consulting work, mainly serving the cities along the I-20 corridor, the Birminghams, the Columbias, and what have you. And you were able to sustain and thrive during that period of time. And so did you always know you were going to get back into real estate, or did you think that you were going to stay this course of the strategy consultant?
No, I never thought too far ahead into real estate. And to be honest with you, the economy still was not thriving in real estate through 2012. So it never occurred to me to get back into real estate. And then there started to become this drumbeat of, Robb, you need to put on your development hat, get back in real estate. Because we started seeing opportunities through our relationships with community development departments in these cities. And then so I kept saying, man, once you get skin up like that with personal guarantees and you lose a lot of money, you go bankrupt, you just started to lose a little of your luster to get back into something that skins you up so bad. But opportunities started to come our way, and then I eventually said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to lay these principles down. I'm not going to be a slave to the business, and I don't want to have capital that we have to provide personal guarantees to. Some of this is willing our way into these situations, but that's exactly what began to happen. And we said it's going to be capital led, meaning that we're going to find, good private capital, because we know that the opportunities and the projects, we can go source those based on our relationships and our entrenchment into the marketplace of real estate. So we led with capital, and then we end up finding these projects to serve the capital needs that were being deployed. And so it was just, being the right time, and then just bringing forward everything I'd ever learned and every relationship I'd ever made, and treating people nicely and holding my word and developing a good reputation and being known to execute. It all just culminated into finding one project. So I knew if I found one project, and I never wanted to just build one house. I wanted to always, get back into it with a project. I knew if I found one project that I could build a company around that one project and leverage that one project into the next. And that's exactly what started to happen in 2017.
And so you said you led with capital. How hard have you found it as a Black man to raise capital? And is it any more difficult than what you've seen your white counterparts do?
Yeah, it is. I've seen my white counterparts go bankrupt multiple times and then go to the same bank and get a loan, And so
Donald Trump.
Yep. Precisely. It's a lot of Donald Trumps here, little Donald Trumps in Atlanta. And so I saw that happen all the time, over and over again. So it is harder for us to raise capital. But, at the same time, I'm not the one to sit there and say, I'm a Black entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur like anybody else with challenges. And then, it's really about overcoming those challenges, whether you're Black or white. But yeah, inevitably, you start to see that there's an inequity. But you either let that stop you or you just forge ahead and with a more intense and aggressive approach to building a business. And so that's what we did.
And so 2017, you launch Cityscape, and it's 2020 now. So, how has that one project that you found that spearheaded the launch, how has that snowballed? It
snowballed in an exponential way. So we launched the one project, the same private equity firm saw it, and we were demonstrating return, told us to go get another project. We got that one. We're on our third or fourth project right now. Then we got into broadband development and reoccurring revenue through a Middle Georgia broadband initiative that we're owners of. Then we got into hotel development that we're currently on the back end of signing a development agreement with a municipality for. So we started diversifying, and then we got into multifamily with a co-developer, and we're building our first multifamily project right now, 9% tax credit project. So it really snowballed beyond our belief. And to some extent, we just wanted to create some cash flow, but then we started seeing that we're building a business that is very much so sustainable. It's in a healthy market. It's under supply. There's a ton of demand. And so this market and this go-round is significantly much better. We're trending twice the amount of houses in year 1, 2, and 3 than we did initially. And so we're on this kind of a super growth journey right now with this company. So, but we're still looking at other ways to diversify and ensure that we don't, be in a position where we're just one-dimensional.
And so what advice would you give to the would-be entrepreneur who's getting ready to launch out and do their own thing?
One is, Plato says the first and most important victory is to conquer oneself. And I think a lot of times when partnerships or just in general in creating deal flow, you got to remove your ego and greed from the table. And I think deals work, partnerships work when you do that. So, and then just to never compromise your principles. At this point, I don't compromise my health or my family for no reason. And just making sure that you understand the demands of what entrepreneurship is going to be and what it's going to have upon you, and come up with your own way to make sure that you're satisfying the demands of a business, but you're also not compromising the things that bring happiness and health to you.
That's Robb Jones, founder of Cityscape Housing. Robb is off to a great start on his second venture into real estate and home construction and looking for more deals across the Southeast. Thanks for listening to the show this week. I'd like to give special thanks to Bill Moore and Addie Claire Evans. And if you would like to hear more about Black entrepreneurs and business leaders, make sure to subscribe to Give 'em the Business on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, make sure to follow us on social media at Give 'em the Business Podcast. And if you want to send me a message, you can find me at I am Troy D. Evans. Give 'em the Business is produced by Two Comma Media. Thanks for listening, and remember to always Troy harder.